Hi, welcome to my demonstration video for my rig. Before I go into the details of the rig, there's a few issues that I'd like to discuss. Firstly, the mesh has some holes in it. This did cause a couple of surprises when it came to skinning, but I worked around these problems and it all worked out in the end. Also, there was a couple of vertexes in the lips, unwelded ones, that did cause a few problems. Thought it was problems with my skin, but I sorted those out and just worked around them, so if it looks a bit strange when I'm doing my facial animation. Onto the rig itself. The arms have IK-FK blending. IK and FK. And the blending between the two is controlled in these controls here. So that's between the two. The finger bending is also controlled here as well, along with finger display and the thumb control as well. This is the same on the other hand as well. Blending and the finger bending. The legs also use IK-FK blending, controlled using this foot controller here. Blends between the two. Also used the reverse foot rig. This gives a nice natural roll to the foot when animating. And with the reverse foot rig, I had a problem with the IK-FK blending, where when I tried to blend between two, the previous methods I used, the foot would either be left behind when one of the other ones moved, and I just decided it just wouldn't work. Probably was horrible stretching and all sorts of issues. So what I did is I used little dummy objects, position orientated between the two IK-FK bones, and then had the foot bones of the blend bones orientation and position constrained to those dummies, and the system works quite well. The spine that I've used is pretty similar to the one we made in class. The real major changes, got the curve going on, and except mine has the addition of a smaller version of it attached to the head when the head moves. Got the neck going there. And with the skin attached, to get some issues with the head, but I'll discuss those later in the conclusion section. So got this bend of the spine there. Drag it back. With the face rig, I looked at several examples on UDN, for examples of how they set up their bones specifically for UDK. And the common theme is we all have all the bones leading back to one common point, so they're all linked into one hierarchy, which is what I've got here. They're all linked like here. Got the jaw here, which leads to the lower lip bones, the eyelids up here, and the cheeks here, and the upper lip here. The green helpers are what you drag around to animate, and the nub is position constrained to these, and then these bones here have look at constraints to keep them looking at here, and then the knobs are then skinned to the mesh. In the head controls up here, got some automation controls for the eyelids, and also the jaw, so you can open it and close it a bit easier. Also set up some keyframes to show the mouth rig at work. and different mouth shapes. In addition to the other features, I've also added some buttons to the centre of mass control, and when these are for anchoring the IK limbs. So when they're not active, they move with the rest of the body, and when they are active, activate some of them, those IK limbs will stay planted where they are. Be useful if you want foot planted for walking animation, for instance, or if they were holding onto something, tugging on something when you needed to animate something like that. So you wouldn't have to worry about keeping that in the same position, you could just lock it in place using this. Initially I tried using position constraints between the IK controls and the centre of mass, but I presumed that when it was at 0 using the reaction manager and a slider, or these buttons that I used, then when it was at 0 I'd still be able to move these around, but even when the position constraint is at 0, they were still locked in place. So I linked these to some extra control dummies that are one for each limb, that are aligned and position constrained. They're the ones which are reaction managed to these buttons, and they are constrained to that, and then these are linked to those constraints. With the layers, all the bones are on one layer, and you've got the IK and FK limbs on a separate layer, just in case you don't need to use them or you need them out of the way. Now the controllers, some of them, the ones you need to manipulate the rig, those ones are with the bones on the bone layer, so they're all the same. But however, all these ones, like in the spine, all the ones which like position constraints, orientation constraints, lookout constraints, all those on a separate layer. So then you can just switch those off, the non-essential ones, so you don't pick them up, break the rig in any way. They're out of the way, safe from harm. So in conclusion, I'd be happy to animate with this rig. I feel that it's got all the tools that I'll need to create some good animations. However, it's not without issues. There are some skinning issues, like here, because of the mesh I picked, I didn't really have enough to get the armpit to blend particularly well, so there is some stretching here where there is a gap. And also on the neck, there are some issues with the skinning there. Also the spine. The spine, when it moves, it leads to some strange oddities with the head. I need to manually go in there, adjust the head so it looks more natural again. If I did it again, I'd do some extra controls, constraints to make sure it blended smoothly. Maybe extra controls so I could blend the neck and the spine at the same time. Extra constraints like that. Maybe extra constraints in the face, so that if I move this part of the mouth, the other parts would be influenced too. Or maybe that would mean that if there was all constraints on these, then I wouldn't be able to manipulate it as finely as if they were all separate. So in the leg, because of the way I did it with constraints, and this lower leg is orientation constrained to a point here, then it does slightly shrink when it's blending between the IK and FK. When it's directly in the middle, there's a slightly noticeable shrink in the bone, but when it's at either end, it's fine. But maybe if there was another solution, I'd have to look that up next time, find a better solution so that the bone remains the same length. And also, when I was picking my mesh again, bring the earlier point about the holes in the mesh, I would evaluate multiple meshes, check them for errors, either fix them, or if I was rigging something for someone else, make them go back and change it, put in the right loops, whatever. Just make sure that the mesh I was using is completely suitable for animation. Anyway, that's the end of my video. Thanks for watching.